Okay, thank you all. 7:30. We like to be very prompt. We know these are very trying times for everybody, and I want to thank you all for coming out. I know how valuable your time is, and there is a Giants game on tonight, so we are going to try to keep this to an hour, just so you know. We will open it up at the end to questions, so if you have anything, try to keep it till the end in case it's something that we're already going to cover in the presentation. What we're going to be going over today is social media responsibility and how it's affecting law enforcement as well as the Scotch Plains Family Board of Education. The presenters that we have are myself. I'm Ted Conley, the Chief of Police with Scotch Plains. I have Chief Trigo here to my right. He's Fanwood Police. Dr. Mast, Superintendent of Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education. Dr. Dumaresk, Park Middle School Principal. Kristen Iarusi, is it Kristen? I just want to make sure I have, yes? Christine Iarusi, she's our district student specialist. And Dr. Heisey, everybody knows, a high school principal. And next to him, Lisa Rabimbis, she's our special services coordinator, director. I have Captain Dawn Rogers from Rawway Police Department. I have Christopher Gunther as a lieutenant, Linden PD, and our SRO, Detective Rich Hernandez from Scotch Plains. So we have a lot, and I get it. Look, if everybody up here took 10 minutes, we'd be here for a couple hours. We'll keep this flowing. We're going to try to keep it going as fast as we can. We ask that it's very nonchalant here, okay? We're not here to try to lecture to you, to try to berate anybody for any posts that they've done. We're here to try to educate people, and us as well. We need your feedback as well. What we're going to do is we're going to let Dr. Mass come up. She's going to take the first part, and she's going to go over how digital citizenship should be handled. So, Dr. Mass.
So thank you for being here tonight. We have new challenges every day in supporting our students and each other. Tonight is a positive example of how we come together as a community. Our lives keep rapidly changing. We are living in a digital world, and as our kids grow up with social media, we are role models for our kids on how we manage our own screen time. Their eyes are on us. We all live with the advantages and the challenges of this very speedy communication. The good news is advice and guidelines are readily available. Just yesterday, there was a New York Times article entitled, "You Live Your Life Online. Don't Forget Your Manners." There are some takeaways from this article that I want to share with you. So in real life and on social media, first impressions matter. It takes 7 seconds for someone to develop an idea about the person you are. So you really want to make sure that your first impression will put you in a position of being a person of influence. Employers, recruiters, and perhaps future business associates read your posts. Don't be passed over for a poorly worded, inappropriate tweet. Some people know that I am an aspiring accordion player, and you could take accordion lessons now via Skype. And I was looking for a teacher who could play a certain type of accordion. Then I went to their social media to get a sense of who they were. And one of these teachers was always posting like sexy pictures of women with accordions. So he did not get me to be his student. You really have to be mindful of what you're posting online. What constitutes inappropriate? You know those old rules of things you don't talk about at mixed holiday tables? I remember when all of my relatives would be coming to New Jersey from Brooklyn, that I would be warned not to talk about religion, politics, or any type of crass material. That was mostly for my brothers. But you would just have to make sure that you were keeping conversation where everyone could be comfortable and enjoy the holidays. Also on social media, you do not want to make any type of statement that would be of a biased nature or anything that could be misinterpreted to be insulting to anyone. When you're on social media, you also want to read the room. So you want to know, in the context where you are, who really knows you. How familiar can you be? What type of language can you use? Do you need to be grammatically correct and accurate? What is the group style of communication? So you really want to look at the atmosphere before you enter in and put something out there that you will regret. There's some additional tips, and I found these to be personally helpful. When you get an email, don't reply all. That's annoying when a whole group of people keep replying all. Sometimes it might be appropriate, but don't do it automatically. Get consent for sharing photos, especially anything where a person doesn't look their very best. I heard recently that a student was making her online presence, and she would want to post pictures of herself with all of her friends, and when she would do that, she would pay attention that she looked her very best, but her friends might have their eyes closed, or they might have their head tilted in such a way that wasn't attractive. All of the pictures of her looked great, but then she couldn't understand why people didn't want their picture taken with her, because it would be posted and she would look good and they might not. Voicemail is inconvenient. I didn't know this. So if you want to leave a person a message, it's best to leave a text, because it takes more time to listen to the voicemail. More importantly, stay human. Always exercise care and consideration for all people. Just because you're on social media doesn't mean that you transform into some type of thoughtless individual. You always want to keep your humanity first and foremost at the center. Get off your device. A 2014 UCLA study found if you are not practicing face-to-face communication, you could be losing important social skills, such as empathy. So it's really important that we get off of our devices and interact with each other and to interact with our students. As parents and educators, we have always focused on the tenets of good citizenship, and we can see them here: honesty, compassion, respect, responsibility, courage. Those are still things that we want to instill in our students, and we want to instill that before they become involved in social media, because we want them to take those characteristics to their online lives. So how we are in real life is how we need to be on social media. And my last thought at the moment for you is that our lives on social media can't be erased. We leave a digital footprint. Even if we think that we erase it, someone else can have it. They can take a screenshot of it, and they can be sharing it in circles that we do not know of. So we always want to make sure that anything we put out there, we're very comfortable that it stays forever. Thank you.
Good evening. I need to preface that I believe we could spend an entire night on the effects social media is having on our students' brain development, socialization, and emotional functioning. Therefore, I spent time brainstorming all the areas that can be addressed tonight, and the question I kept asking myself is, how can we as parents better support our children's emotional self in our technological world? Dopamine is a natural brain chemical that acts as a messenger in the brain. It affects movement, mood, learning, and behavior, in particular addictive behavior. Whenever we expect or receive a reward, there is a release of dopamine. There are programmers schooled in neuroscience creating computer applications based on how our brain's reward system works, in hopes of keeping us more dependent on our devices. Researchers have discovered that the typical person checks their phone every 15 minutes. This is largely due to the anxiety-provoking thoughts we have when most of us, including our children, put our phones down. This causes a release of the stress hormone cortisol in our body, which is not good for us. When we give in to the urge to look at our device, dopamine is released and this habit is reinforced. When was the last time you were somewhere without your phone? Or the struggles you face daily setting boundaries of phone use for your children? Our brain's hardwiring is being changed, which may be more detrimental for a developing brain. As I continued to think about the original question, I began to think about what are the kinds of things that, long before social media existed, is a part of human development. And the first thing that came to mind was how our self-image develops early in life. It is the way we view ourselves, our world, and where we fit in. Self-image is largely based on how we were parented, and for our children, how we parent, and the feedback we get from others. However, what has changed is our children's environment has extended itself far beyond the walls of our home, school, and community. So I ask, what happens to the self in the world of selfies? Mistakes, failures, and embarrassing moments that are a natural and necessary part of development once remained private or to a small group of individuals, too often expands to a much larger, unwanted audience, which at times can seem inescapable. Coupled with our children consistently making social comparisons to their peers, which again is a natural part of development, has an impact because often in today's world, our students are not comparing themselves to reality. They are comparing themselves to an image that has been created to look its most desirable and spend much time on pruning their own online identities. No longer is the concern about the Photoshop magazine ad. What about the applications our young people are using today to adjust their photos? They sort through dozens of pictures to post just the right one, or spend endless time on creating the right post. They compete for attention often in other ways, putting more weight in the number of followers or streaks. Self-esteem is in a sense the narrator of the stories people tell themselves every day, likened to a soundtrack. Social media doesn't create a narrative that is reflective of our own reality and the reality of others. We as adults can be easily tricked by making comparisons on social media as well. With the feedback loop being such a part of an individual's self-image, how as parents can we help our children develop a positive self-image or self-esteem? Self-acceptance is not easy, and as parents we need to be mindful of how social media can play into this. Our children need to know they are not alone, that the struggle for self-acceptance is part of the human condition. Social media is a way to develop self-awareness of what our emotions mean, about who we are and what we value. We can think of our emotions as data. By having discussions with your children about your own emotions, when someone hurts your feelings or excludes you, can create powerful dialogue. You will be able to model what it means to sit with uncomfortable feelings, reassess your values, and respond with care and grace. Technology doesn't have an inherent goodness or badness. It's just a tool, an instrument with which we can do harm or good. There is more research showing that an increase of social media increases the likelihood of anxiety, depression, and social isolation. The more connected we are, the more disconnected we may feel. The Center for Disease Control issued statistics in 2018 about 1/3 of teens surveyed said they felt persistent sadness and hopelessness. As parents, we can model what it means to practice both self-compassion and social compassion, which we can all use more of. We want our children to be gentle and kind to oneself, to quiet the inner dialogue that can become so self-critical with feelings of inadequate self-worth. The more we pay attention to our children's social and emotional being, the less negative effects social media will have on them. There is science behind the positive health effects of being kind to one another. The old, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, is a great reminder for social compassion. I recently read a book, Resisting Happiness, and the author reflects on a difficult moment in his life. Except from the outside, he looked fine, and people went about their business. It is the harsh reality that we don't often know what is going on in someone's life, but we can be sure that everyone we meet in person or online is fighting some kind of hard battle. Where there is a better sense of community, we feel better about ourselves. It's all about promoting those feelings of connectedness. Social connectedness is an integral part of healthy development. Most of us are aware of the ways communication has changed amongst our youth. More of it is happening behind a screen than at the mall or around town. Whatever the form may be, it is the social connectedness our children seek as they establish their own self-identity. The FOMO, fear of missing out, is real, and the need for social acceptance. I do believe that we as parents continue to seek opportunities to model self-compassion and the compassion for others, listen actively to our children, and guide them to recognize their self-worth and the responsibility they have to others, then the self will not be lost in the selfie. Thank you. And now Dr. Dumaresque.
Good evening, everyone. So, just to underscore a lot of the points that Mrs. Iarussi made about, the impact that technology is having on our youth today, we often find ourselves in the home having trouble setting limits on our students' devices because their lives and their self-efficacy are so wrapped up with their lives online. So in order to build those good habits of, positive self-image and empathy that we really want our students to practice, I often like to share at different orientations and back-to-school nights some tips for parents in the home to help make their home a more tech-positive environment. So one of the first things that I suggest is to come up with a family media agreement. And you can find a lot of these types of contracts online. I like one from Common Sense Media, and I've brought copies tonight. And if anyone's interested, you can certainly grab one from me at the end of the presentation. But it allows students and families to have really productive conversations about important topics like online safety, cyberbullying, and finding a media balance. And opening up these doors of communication for limits really can benefit our students in a lot of ways. For one, we can make an agreement as family members to have limited screen time, which really is positive for both students and families because we certainly encourage parents to limit their screen time as well. We recognize that we could have places in the home, again, this would be a part of the contract, where students are to turn in their devices at night to keep them out of the bedroom, which is what we'll talk about next, and that has really positive effects as well. And something that could be in this family media agreement would also be how students should be using their device at school. One of the things that we see at the middle schools, for example, are students kind of sneaking away from class to make TikToks and post videos in the bathroom or locker rooms, which certainly presents a wide range of issues. First, it's taking away from learning, but second, we did have an incident last year where we had a couple girls filming themselves on TikTok in the locker room while other girls were changing behind them, and that is a major issue, and you wouldn't want, obviously, your son or daughter to be put in that situation. So coming up with a contract for acceptable use is one great way of having a more tech-positive home and school. The second tip that I like to share with parents is keep devices out of bedrooms. And you'll notice that a lot of these tips could extend to you as well because technology in the bedroom, like social media, even TVs, gaming devices, have had direct links to negative sleep patterns, disruption in sleep, fewer hours of sleep, more trouble going to bed at night. And this has obviously a significant impact on our adolescent brains, where we know that brain functioning is still, their brains are still developing, and the sleep is so needed for academic performance, physical growth, mood, all kinds of things. So getting those devices out of bedrooms is so, so important. I had a conversation with a student in September who kept falling asleep in class, and I was asking him, so what's your bedroom routine? What are your patterns? I thought he was just having some general time struggle sleeping, and he told me he was playing Fortnite until about 3 in the morning every night. So I said, there's a reason you're falling asleep in class every day. So get those devices out of the bedrooms and set up some time to help your students do that. Number 3, monitor your students' online activity. We're going to talk a lot tonight about social media applications. The best thing you can do is to get to know TikTok, Instagram, Roblox, YouTube, kind of inside and out. Because what we're finding is that what a lot of parents don't know is that these social media apps where they think it's just posting a video or posting pictures, they're actually messaging features that you can direct message users on. And we're finding that a lot of parents don't know that this is a different way to text or to message. And a lot of our cyberbullying cases have come from these messaging applications, these kind of like back channeling on Instagram, on TikTok. So please get familiar with what your students are doing, because then it'll help you have conversations at home, and it might also help us at school. Something as well that we used to mention, actually the police used to mention when we would do social media presentations for parents, is you might want to consider getting your students' passwords to their social media accounts. This might be another way to help monitor your students' social media activity. Number 4, again, we're going to talk a lot about this tonight, but being your own a good model of technology use for your own students. So obviously we know how important you as parents are as role model for your kids, so we would encourage you to model good online behavior for that as well. And setting your own screen time use too. Your kids notice. I've talked to a lot of kids who've said, I wish my parents got off their devices at dinner, or I wish my parents put down their devices at night and just talked to me about how my day was. You'd be surprised to know how many kids actually want to spend more quality time at night and have their parents put down their devices. And then finally, just maintaining those open communication channels about what they're doing online, the things they're interested in, not in a punitive way, but just, hey, let's get to know your online life, because we recognize that these devices aren't going away. Social media certainly isn't going away, but the more we talk about it positively and productively and help set limits with our students, the better. So I've put up some suggestions of resources for you to check out to help you have these conversations. I already mentioned Common Sense Media, which I really like for family media contracts and a lot of other things, but also waituntil8th.org is actually an online movement to encourage families to not buy their students' devices until they're in 8th grade, and there's a lot of research to support why that's a good thing. And then also, I just want to plug that next Monday we are having Screenagers, which is a documentary film about the impact of technology on students' socio-emotional health. That will be right here next Monday, December 16th at 7 p.m. There's information online if you'd like to get tickets. We screened the previous documentary. It was kind of the prequel to this about 2 years ago with really, really good reception. This is a follow-up documentary by Delaney Rustin, who's a doctor and a documentarian, and we really encourage you all to come out. You can find out information online and get tickets, and hopefully we'll just continue the good conversation that we are starting tonight. So thank you, and turn it back over to Chief Connolly.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. DeRest. That was fantastic. If anybody in the panel wants to chime in at any time when we do our presentation, again, we're very laid back, so feel to jump in. What we're going to be covering today, again, are social media networks. You're all very familiar with this. I'm not going to go into it too much, but you do have to start understanding that there are fake websites or fake things that your kids are doing. A common one is Finsta. It's your fake Instagram. They'll do stuff, so when you say, let me go check what you're doing online, they have a fake account that they can show you. So you have to learn that, and you have to make sure, okay, well, it's as easy as just saying, okay, show me the real one now. You know, you never know. Maybe they're going to show up. That's one of these police techniques we use all the time. Maybe they'll give it to you, maybe they won't. Roll the dice, see what happens. Okay, these are the things that we're going to be going over today from the law enforcement end. First is think before you post. The second is kind of two topics mixed together. It's going to be the mob mentality and that kids make mistakes. And we'll finish with the law enforcement perspective on investigating posts in social media, because it's extremely, extremely difficult for us to look into these things once they're posted. Okay, think before you post. This is one where we're going to ask you, like, you look at this post, it's kind of hard to see on the side, but it says, like, my son heard Danny is going to bring a gun to school. Oh my God, he's a real problem kid. Yeah, they just moved him to town. Did you report it? No, but I'm putting it on. I know the police monitor social media. Okay. One thing we're asking you not to post is hearsay. Okay, it's again, when we say we're not trying to blame anybody, we're just trying to educate you. If your son did hear that Danny's bringing a gun to school, I think the first thing you should do is contact us. Because once you put it on social media, you just put a whole can of kerosene on a fire, and we don't know if we can get control of it once that gets out there. If it's hearsay, call us and understand that something like this, because it happens, that's why we're here today, that something like this, our dispatchers will take 100 phone calls, and that's okay. But you have to sit there and work with the dispatchers and work with the call takers and let them ask their questions. But before you make that phone call, ask yourself, ask your kids, did you really hear Danny say he's going to bring a gun to school today? And if your kid says yes, then say, okay, call the police, call us, because you know what? We need to interview Danny. okay? Because we did have a recent incident here. And again, just I'm sure the majority of you know about the incident we had. And we're not here for the content of the picture. We're here for what happened after, okay? Because they said that this kid's going to bring a gun to school, okay? And it's all over social media. And our detectives are going crazy. They're trying to look back and they're trying to investigate it. And we can't find out if he's going to or not. So what do? We go to the house. We interview the suspect child. They don't have any access to guns that we know of. There's nothing in the house. So there's no threat. So right there, technically, from a law enforcement perspective, we're done. We've interviewed the suspect. There's no threat. But what we have an issue with is what happens if there is, your son or daughter did see Danny hide a gun in a creek downtown somewhere that we don't know about. And if you're just posting it and we can't get to that post or get to the original post, we can't find that out. So we're rolling the dice saying it's not a credible threat because we've checked all the boxes. There's no access to guns here, but there may be, and that's the problem. It's one of the main problems. Don't be so fast to post it. Call us. Call us. Let us talk to you. You talk to us. I'm an old school guy. I believe in face-to-face conversations. Our detectives are so into it, they can just tell. When they start, especially children, they start interviewing them, they're hiding something. They can tell by seeing that. You can't tell from what they put in a post. Okay, so please, if it's hearsay, don't post it. Don't post it. If you want to call us, call dispatch. We'll send an officer. We'll talk to you. But once you post this hearsay, somebody else hears it. The old telephone game, the grapevine. Somebody else hears that. They see this post. Oh, did you hear there's a gun going to school? There's going to be, then it's a bomb, and we have no way of tracking that back. So the first thing we ask is any hearsay that you have, and if you don't know what hearsay is, with all the impeachment trials going on, I'm sure you probably do, but if you or your son or daughter didn't hear it directly, it's hearsay. If you or your son or daughter, they heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else, then it's just a telephone game at this point. But let us interview your son or daughter. And then when they say they heard it from Sam next door, well, we're going to go interview Sam. And then when Sam says, no, I made it up, then we know we can stop there. Okay? But that's where we need you to help us out. The next thing we're going to see is these are some things that, again, think before you post, but these are things that need to be reported to the police immediately. Okay, the first one is really small, very hard to see. My son said Johnny is on the way to the high school with a gun. Oh my God, what should we do? I don't know. I know we're posting it. The police monitor social media, so we don't have to worry. Did anyone call the police? No, we posted it. Okay, that's not. We need to have that one called in. The second one, my daughter said Samantha's researching how to make a pipe bomb. I heard she's been getting bullied a lot lately at school. And the third one says my son Johnny Doe has a list of people that he's going to take out at school. Seriously, you have to report that to the police. These are things that are specific. These are specific. These are not just, okay, I heard he's going to bring a gun to school. These have some specificity to it. We need to talk to you and your kids. Because if there is something and you post it, you don't understand. Like when you post it, you might just trying to be warning other people, but what you're doing is you're also telling the suspect they know what you're going to do. Do it now. You know, don't hold back. Don't wait that extra day. Don't wait till next week. If somebody is planning on doing something, you just set them in motion right now. We need to interview you first. We need to be going to their house before they know anybody's onto them. So think. Before you put this stuff on social media, call us. I don't care if it takes 2 or 3 days. We will interview every one of you. We'll do whatever we can to make that happen. But don't get impatient with us and just go run to social media and post it. You might be setting something in motion that we can't pull back. Okay? All right, and then the third part about think before you post is this example. And here, before we get to that last part, the text is, my daughter heard that this goth kid named Darren is going to bring a gun to school. I heard he's a real freak. The school should do something about it. Yeah, I reported to the principal. What are they going to do about it? They sent him out for a psych exam. He's not allowed back in school. This one seems kind of weird, but again, what could be wrong with that post? What's wrong with it is that it's something that actually happened here in Scotch Plains. And I left out a lot of details because it's a juvenile matter and it's not the important part. But the important part was, yes, we did have a goth kid who was having some family problems at home. His parents were going through a divorce. It was really tough times for him. The school talent show was coming up the following week. Somebody thought they'd be funny and said, hey, what's your talent going to be, bringing a gun to school and shooting it up? This kid didn't say a word. He didn't say a thing. He was quiet, embarrassed. He just laughed. Next thing you know, that got out, that he's bringing a gun to school. And then the social media took off like wildfire. And then what do we have to do? What does the school have to do? They have to take this kid out, and they have to question him. And again, he's quiet. He didn't say anything, didn't want to pose any threat, having lots of problems at home, but was not a violent threat to anybody that we could see, or that the psychiatrist could see after he had to go see them after this incident. And then when he was returned to school, the social media monster took over again, and the parents were like, I can't believe he's back at school. This kid's going to shoot it up. Again, he never said it, never threatened it, never put anything out there. He had to go out again. Go ahead, Rich.
Think if that was your kid that they were going after. And the things that were written about that kid and the family, I would never understand how people could put that, write the things that they wrote about this kid when they had no factual basis of anything. Just look in the mirror. If that was you, how would you feel if that was your kid? It's wrong.
Think about that.
And they're all adults. It's all adults putting this out.
Exactly. This is where it went. It was adults saying it. It wasn't kids saying Darren's a freak and this and that. And the other. It was adults saying that. We are the adults. Okay, we're the ones that have to sit there and live in this crazy world right now. But what my point was, when this happened over a year ago, I wanted to get it out at the time because, like Chief Trigo said, this is your kid next. Your kid didn't do anything, doesn't have to do anything. It just has to be a couple kids sitting next to him that they don't like him or her. And now they make up a rumor about him. And now your kid's going to be one. This kid doesn't go to school here in this district anymore. Again, there was things that were wrong with the family. He decided to go live with his father. Hopefully everything's worked out for him. But I felt horrible. This is our community. This is how we take care of one of our own kids who didn't make a threat, didn't do anything, but we'll jump on that bandwagon. You don't know anything about him. The people that were posting didn't know anything about him. They just thought, hey, you posted, so I can post. And now if you posted, then this person's going to post. I'm telling you, it's going to be one of your kids in here next. Don't let it happen. This is our responsibility. We are the adults. We have to live in this scary world. We take the brunt of this. Your kids are watching you. Our kids are watching us. If we start posting stuff like this, they're going to say it's okay for us to do it. I can jump on that bandwagon. I can jump on with this mob mentality. No, and we're here to tell you that that's not okay. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir because the people here who take time out of your day are not the ones we need to be explaining this to, which is why we're live streaming this and we're going to put it on social media so that all those people can put their comments out there later. But I hope we all learn from it because I don't want to see another kid do this. All right?
One of the things when we talk about like this incident here, all of these people are writing these different things, but no one ever takes the time, thank you, Captain, for perfect words here, of the emotional self-harm, that job of doing self. How would you feel? You have no factual basis of what went on. It was a rumor made up. Say this kid did something to himself. How would you feel? Some of the posts that were out there, some people are heartless. Think it was said some stuff that was inappropriate. But just think about all the ramifications that are on your post.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just talk into the mic for a minute?
Oh, sorry.
I'll belt out a couple tunes later, okay? But, take responsibility. When Ted talked before about the telephone game, I went to Catholic grammar school, high school, and college. And I was in the 70s, giving my age, we played that telephone game. And it was Sister Assunta. We played the telephone game, and just say it was, Sister Assunta is the best teacher in Mount Carmel. By the time it got to the 30th kid, that wasn't the message. So we did that, and then Sister Assunta made us write down what we told the person as we went along. By the time we got to the end, we all knew it was the right message because you were accountable for what you wrote. People today don't want to take accountability for what they write. Whenever I send an email, I don't like emails because they interpret it the way I said it. Oh, I'm in caps. Get rid of caps. That means I'm mad. All this other stuff. People just post emotions. What happens when you do things from emotion? You don't think it out. And that's what social media is doing with a lot of these incidents that we're investigating. But on one of the recent incidents that occurred, there were like 40 posts before someone put out there, hey, did you call the cops? That should have been the first thing when something happens. Call the police. It's like when we talk about terrorism. See something, say something. Same thing. You hear something's going on in Fanwood, Scotch Plains, or any town. You hear something, call it. Let's take ownership, because too many times it's the 1980s song by REO Speedwagon. Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend. Well, let's find out who these friends are, so when we do the investigation, we could find out where it came from before everything starts going into these little subgroups. I know I go off on tangents, but I will sing later.
That's okay. Here, you're up next. Don't put the mic down, because we're going to go right into the mob mentality that Chief Trigo is going to lead us on.
I'll stay over here. Captain Roger, Lieutenant Gunther. Basically, the mob mentality, the definition right there, it's a herd mentality, mob mentality, and a pack mentality, also lesser known as a gang mentality, describes how people can be influenced by their peers to adopt certain behaviors on a larger emotional rather than rational basis. Basically, what that says is, I have no information what happens, but I'm going to weigh in. I'm going to give you my opinion, and it's going to be strong. So, Cap, you want to talk, and Lieutenant, you want to talk about a couple instances before I...
Not to Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Not to beat a dead horse and go on. We all have stories. We were asked to sit in as a joint initiative with Union County, and we appreciate the opportunity to listen for feedback and also to be a part of this presentation. Every district has similar stories and issues. We had one not too long ago that occurred in Rahway that basically took off as well, spiraled out of control. A student sent a text from the middle school to a high school kid that they knew about an incident that they really didn't have knowledge about. The high school kids then sent text, who then sent it to parents. The parents became involved, and that was really where it got out of control. And we have the obligation of parents, as parents, to also be responsible for our online presence and our texting and our social media posts, if not a greater responsibility, because we're the role models. We are setting those examples. If we expect our children to be responsible, we need to make sure that we're doing the same thing. And this incident spiraled way out of control. A list of names suddenly became a hit list, and suddenly became where they were bringing a gun to school, and panic. Parents were in a panic, rightfully so. We're all parents here. We can understand how something like that can be extremely alarming. None of these parents took the time to contact the police department. This went for hours the night before, and finally in the morning somebody had the wherewithal to say, let me pick up the phone and call the cops. It took hours of investigative investigation to just backtrack to find the original posters, to find out the facts. And again, but the sad part about it was that it already had spread to, we all have those community forums online that are meant to bring up issues in town or talk about town events. Well, unfortunately, this issue was posted online. And even though after spending countless hours to investigate and debunk it and put that information out there, the damage was done. Parents were flooding the police department with calls of concern, flooding the schools. They were inundated. Schools that it didn't even affect or impact. It was specific to the middle school, but the grammar school and the high school were getting inundated with calls because the social media damage had already occurred. Fast forward 2 weeks,
the kid is seen at school, and now it's back on the forums again. Hey, how can this happen? How can this kid be back in school when there was nothing to investigate to begin with? So, again, that mob mentality of throwing it out there and being responsible for your action, not joining in the crowd. We expect our children to be leaders and not followers. We have an obligation to do the same and not have keyboard courage, really just pick up the phone, let's get the facts, talk to the police department. We honestly don't think that you're bothering us. That's our job, to investigate. We take the safety of your students extremely seriously. It's our utmost priority. Call us. We will gladly investigate it, but rather than let it spiral out of concern, it does make things so much more difficult. So I don't want to, we all have stories, I don't want to belabor this any more, but that really is just something that we have a responsibility as well, and that's how we're also going to get that example across to our children.
So, in Linden, we obviously, if you've ever watched the news, we're not short for stories. In fact, we had an incident just today, and as we talk about this, one of the things that pops in my head is, if you remember a few years back, there was a commercial on TV, and it always stuck with me. And it was a guy and a girl, and they were talking, and, hey, what are you doing, whatever, and it was like, if it was on the internet, it must be true, right? Well, for whatever reason, that seems to be the mentality that we take with things that are on Facebook, is that if it's on Facebook and somebody said that this happened, it must have happened. And we don't really give kids the chance to be investigated and find out the whole story. A lot of what we talked about today deals with the schools, obviously. That's a real common thing now. We just had an incident today in Linden. But what I want to talk about is an incident from October. In October in Linden, we had an incident where a young boy, 9 years old, went outside to get something from his car. When he was outside, he saw a van parked just a little way up the street, stopped in the middle of the street. One of the men exited the car, had something in his hand, and the kid ran back inside and told his mom what he saw. And the mother ran right down the street to the school where her son goes and reported about how these three men in a white van attempted to abduct her son. Now, the men never approached her son. The men never had any contact whatsoever with her son. But for various reasons, and part of what was fueled by social media with reports of white vans driving around trying to abduct kids for human trafficking. She really believed that these three men tried to abduct her son, and they had tasers, and had he not come in the house at that moment, her son was going to be abducted. Now, she was genuinely concerned, and I don't have any problem, obviously, with her concern. What happened was she then took that and posted it online to warn all of her neighbors and friends about this van that was driving around attempting to abduct kids. And it took off. The hyper-local news media picked it up, the RLS media, and before you know it, there's hundreds of posts in these groups about how kids are in danger, and I'm getting calls from major news networks wanting to know about the attempted abduction that never happened. When we looked into it, what happened was these guys were pretty much known to us. They drive around and they deliver newspapers in your driveway. And they're throwing out these advertisements, and as part of their route, they have to stop every so often and check in on GPS device. So the driver got out of his car to check in on his GPS device, and lo and behold, the mother believed that he had a taser, and he was going to take her kid. So the message I'm trying to get out with that, obviously, is just because it's on social media, don't necessarily mean that that's what happened. Don't believe it. Give us a chance to look into it. Give us a chance to find out the whole story, and then trust me when I tell you, once we know what's going on, we're going to let you know, because we don't want you to worry any more than you have to. Thank you.
Just quick. Close your eyes and think of something that you've done that would embarrass you or your family if someone was ever there with a camera taking pictures of it. I can assure you, Sister Assunta would still be chasing me today with that yardstick if there were cameras when I was growing up. Okay? When we take pictures, everyone thinks, hey, I'm just sending it in that little group. That picture, once it's gone, it's gone. It's out there. Personally, I tell myself, my family, when you want to take a picture, look behind you when you take a picture. See if there's any writing, the poster, anything behind you, or someone says, hey, I want to jump in that picture, a friend wants to jump in a picture, and they have a shirt on that says a message. You already own, since you're in that picture, you own that picture. You are labeled, and no matter what, hey, he was in this picture, that is your belief. And like the captain and lieutenant was saying, the police read social media for information. We never read it to get validation. It's a big difference, okay? Just because it was on the internet doesn't mean that it was it actually happened. And again, think of the consequences for the kid that becomes a victim because he did absolutely nothing wrong. And what happens, what would your conscience tell you if that kid did do something, harmed himself or something like that? Kids are going to make mistakes. Pretty easy. You make a mistake, own up to it, learn from it, and try never to repeat it. And like we were talking before about the selfie, go online and look how many people die every year trying to get that perfect selfie. They're on a cliff. I want to get that picture. And who gets hurt? The social media, as adults, we have a responsibility to the kids to try to teach them. All right, you go on some of the town sites and you see bullying going on from adults. Never mind with kids. We're supposed to be teaching them the right way to do things. And they're standing there, or they might hear, hey, your father, your mother posted this. Think, just like as I said before with the email, we always, you spell check before you send everything. Don't send posts with emotion in it. And again, don't send information out as factual when you have absolutely no clue. The police, we don't want to respond to rumors. You hear something, let us know, and let the detectives or the officers, whatever it is, chase down where it originated. So then we can go out and let you know everything is okay. Everybody wants self-gratification within the first 10 minutes. During that incident, well, the cops aren't putting anything out because they don't want us to know the truth. No, we want you to run with all of this information and just keep posting. We are investigating. We have to find out exactly what happened. So again, it comes back to don't get that mob mentality. Hear something, have information, call the police, and don't feed into it. And just because it's on the internet or it's in a social post, it's not the truth. Let us find out what the truth is. Rich, did you want to touch on something?
No, I was just, one point that when you were talking about kids make mistakes, and I'm not chalking it up to a kids mentality at all, but please be mindful that kids tend to phrase things a little bit differently than adults do, and sometimes the words that they say aren't necessarily what's meant. A good example, sometimes the threats are very specific, but sometimes a good example of somebody speaking out of anger, and this was more prevalent in our generation. I think the younger generation now is more mindful of the words that they choose, but think about it, when we were younger, somebody saying, you know what, I'm going to kill him. Well, that meant we were angry with them. That didn't necessarily mean that we were actually going to do physical harm at all. And so be mindful as well that especially kids who may have learning disabilities or they may be on the spectrum, they're not able to communicate as well, they phrase things differently than we do. And while we'll investigate it, it doesn't necessarily mean the intent was there. So you do have to be mindful about that. I just thought it was something when the kids make mistakes. They do make mistakes in some of the things that they say as well. We do have to be mindful about that.
I just really had one point to make, and that is social media is the problem, but it's also the solution to the problem. And it's the solution to the problem through our positive use of, or appropriate use of, our modeling of social media. I mean, I suspect just about everyone in this auditorium has either Facebook or a Twitter, maybe an Instagram, whatever the case may be. And it's important that, I'd like to think that someday, over several years in generations and use of social media, we will gradually see a trend in inappropriate use. It connects people that are like-minded. So there are many positive things. So, we can walk out of here tonight with certainly some negative negative thoughts, impressions on social media, but at the same time, it is the solution. And I'm optimistic. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's maybe not going to happen in 2 years, but I think several years down the road, as young people and generations become familiar with social media, we are going to see greater, more positive outcomes, and as we use it more. Thank you.
So without getting into specific details, earlier this year we had a student post a video of himself online playing sports. Other students began commenting on it, and one in particular posted something offensive, and this escalated into a physical confrontation in the school. Another incident that we had a couple years ago involved a female student who sent a topless photo of herself to another student. The student who received the photo passed the photo on to other students. Once multiple students had seen the photo, faculty at school became aware of the incident and contacted us. Due to the sensitive nature of the incident and the age of the student, the Union County Prosecutor's Special Victims Unit was contacted. All students who had received the photo on their cell phones had their cell phones seized as it contained what is considered child pornography. All then who possessed or sent the photo could have been charged with child pornography and have their futures ruined, all because of that. And I just wanted to add in there, I think it was mentioned earlier, so kids are usually taught or guided on what to do for most situations. However, they're not always taught on what to do for social media interactions. But by the time they come to school, most of the situations have already escalated, and then we're sort of in damage control as most of the damage has already occurred. So I believe this can be avoided by properly educating our kids on the possible repercussions of what they post online, as we were doing here tonight.
And just to underscore the 2 points made here, kids will make mistakes. They will post things that are inappropriate online. But as Dr. Heisey said, it can also be an opportunity. It can be a solution too. So last year we had a student share a video that was kind of only intended for her group of friends. She shared it with a couple other people, and that video that happened to be something embarrassing that her friend had done really caught on like wildfire, and then just got spread to many students, but instead of just chastising that student and implementing a consequence, we used it as a teachable moment, as an opportunity to have that student reach out and then do social media etiquette lessons for younger students in the school. So it really became an opportunity to not only teach her and have her do research on what the best way to involve and work with her social media would be, but also then to reach out to younger students in order to educate, younger groups to make sure that we could make a better, more positive impact for when they started to get social media in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. That's excellent. The last part that we're going to be dealing with is the law enforcement perspective on investigation of social media posts. We're getting very close to our hour mark, so I'm sure this will be fast. The bottom line with this is, if you look at something like that, how hard is it for us to go back and find the initial post? The last one we had, that last incident where they said there was going to be a gun brought to school, our detectives were tracing it back, trying to find out who said what, to find out if there was an actual threat, an actual credible threat. And then we had to stop where it went to a private chat group and we didn't have access. So we can't investigate some of these things. So don't assume it. Please, call us. Don't assume that, that we have all these magic components, computer things that we can trace everything back. The FBI in certain places do. On the local level, no, we don't have that. If we need it, we can use the FBI and prosecutor's office, etc. But for these smaller incidents, we're not going to be calling them out. And then we just come to a dead end where we can't go any further. Our detectives have nowhere else to look as far as where is this investigation leading. And it leads to lots of sleepless nights for all of us. When we're sitting there going, I really hope that whoever put that initial post out doesn't know something. That's where we're asking you guys here. That's our ultimate goal tonight, is just to say, I use a 24-hour rule. Some of our guys at work can really push my buttons. What I try to do is, unless it's something I have to take care of immediately, unless it's something emergency or something where somebody's safety is in jeopardy, I try to put a 24-hour rule. And I tell everybody I have a Swiss cheese tongue because I'm always biting it. And I'll wait 24 hours. If after 24 hours and a halfway decent night's sleep, which I don't think any of us have gotten at all, ever, but when you wake up, if it's still that bad, then yeah, you have to deal with it. It's something, so before you post, if it's really that bad, then post it 24 hours later. Because I guarantee 90% of what you were thinking about, if it's something that you like, oh, I was going to post it, and you wait till the next day, you probably won't even remember what you were thinking about posting that night before. Okay, so I hope you got something out of this. I'd really like to thank Chief Greco, Ryan Greco from Cranford, and Chief Hart from Linden for coming here. You guys have anything you'd like to add? I know you guys have been through a lot with all these social media posts. It's not just here.
So Chief Conley.
Yes, thank you.
I can imagine, I too am a parent. I have a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old. And listening to everything that you're listening to tonight and having details, because I'm on the other side, and I live this every day, just as you do. And I hope we all take a deep breath right now and just think about all of this, because there's two perspectives of this. There's the side that is our parent side, and modeling appropriate use and talking about safety with using the technology. It's a wonderful tool. I think of the things that our children have access to that we never had access to. And I tease my kids all of the time that they get to listen to my music because of the internet. And they love it, I think. But no, I'm just kidding. But I think of how wonderful it is that my college-age son gets to play his video games with his friends that are at other universities, and they get to enjoy time together. Then I think of my daughter, who gets to see her Stanford Cardinal win yesterday the national championship for women's soccer that she adores. I think of all of those great things that social media gives us. But then I think of the ramifications that they live in a society that we didn't grow up in, and that we live in now. So I think of all of the time teenagers have to know about social media, to know about the software apps that are out there, that we don't have time to do. So one of the examples they talked about was Finsta, right? So the fake Instagram, that's the big thing. There are so many apps out there that we don't have access to or we don't know about, that we really need to have those conversations with our kids about safe usage, how, like Dr. Heisey said, that when we're using social media, the games, it can be for a good thing, but also the pieces that we need to be leery of. That the person who pretends to be another 14-year-old playing the game may be or may not be. Those safety things that we talk about. When I was a kid, my parents told me, don't talk to strangers. We all talk to strangers on social media now. There are no strangers on social media. So we need to teach our students, our children, how to use social media appropriately, how to look at context. One of the things that we lose through social media is that power of seeing faces and talking to people and really knowing what the inside joke is to the funny picture that was posted. Sometimes we get the joke, sometimes we don't. Sometimes there is a positive piece to it, but because of our experiences, we're bringing negative to it. So we really need to have those interactions and those dialogues with our kids, with our family, with all of the people that we work with, that we communicate with, and not to be so quick to snap and to come to judgment about what someone writes. The other piece that I think that I'm hearing tonight, which is a really big issue, and as a former middle school principal, I used to say, I can control middle school children until their parents come. And I could sit there and take 600 middle schoolers and quiet them down in 10 seconds without a problem until one parent walked in. Then I was done. And that's what social media has done. When you think of the posts that we do as adults for these things that are happening in our schools, we may not have all of the information, we may not have all of the context, we may not have all of the information the students have, and when we're perpetuating things online and making statements online, it's really impacting our students negatively. And when Chief Trigo is talking about, think of it being our children, it could be one of our children. It can be something innocent. And as one of the people that works with the mental health side of our schools, we see how these posts impact the kids. We see how scared they become because you're scared. So another thing I knew as a principal, whenever anything bad happened, everyone looked at my reaction. And I'm pretty visual, I can't hide much. If I was calm, everyone else was calm. If I was frantic, everyone else was frantic. So as adults, when we see something that's scary online or hear about a rumor that's scary online, and we perpetuate that by writing something that's even scarier or fills that fear, we're really doing that mob mentality that everyone is talking about. So I hope you leave today with the thought of you as a user of technology and all the positive things that can come from it. I think of all my friends that graduated 30 years ago from high school that I still am in touch with because of social media. But think about our responsibility as parents, probably the harder piece of social media, because their lives are totally recorded. And we were able to rip up those pictures. Remember those embarrassing 80s pictures with our hair all the way up here? We were able to rip those up. They're not able to. So having these important conversations with them, I think is another takeaway from tonight. There's such a balance that we have going on, and I hope that you're able to take all these little tidbits and all of these stories and walk away with at least one nugget to take home with your children. I think we're going to open up for questions.
Yeah, if anybody has questions.
I just wanted to add just one thing. 2 key words that you need, that we should all, telling anybody, this isn't to tell you not to post or anything. Just remember, words matter before you send it. That's all. Anybody coming up for questions, please step up to the mic, and we'll try our best to answer them. Seeing that there's no questions and the Giants are kicking off.
I've put my email address up here. If you have any questions for me or anybody on the panel, feel free to send it to me, and I'll make sure it gets to them. Also, love to have your feedback on how to make this better, because as you can see with the other chiefs and the other towns that are coming here, we're going to try to make this a county-wide program, and we'd like your input on how we can make it better so that it can just grow and get better. Because we're not here to scare you. We get it. We're parents too. And believe me, we have kids. We know how scary this world can be. And sometimes we have to sit there, and like Lisa just said, we have to be the ones that put on a false front and make it look like everything's good when inside you're just going crazy. But that's our job. Okay, so any questions you have, feel free to email me. I'll make sure it gets out. Any suggestions? There's the live link. I'm hoping that if you just take a picture, we'll leave it up, because I'm sure nobody's going to write that down. Again, any questions, anything you have, thank you all very much for coming out. We really appreciate your participation.